"You didn't pay for any of this," my mother-in-law whispered, smiling for the guests. "You're just a leech." My father-in-law added, "Without our son, you'd be nothing." I swallowed my anger as cameras flashed and kids laughed around us. Then someone tapped a glass and said, "Actually, that's not true. My name is Savannah Brooks and I'm 34 years old. I work as a full-time elementary school teacher during the week and a part-time freelance curriculum designer on evenings and weekends. I'm married into a family that measures people by bank accounts and job titles. And from the very first dinner I attended at their long mahogany table, I could feel them weighing me and finding me light. To them, a teacher was someone who couldn't do anything more impressive. My husband, Grant, works in pharmaceutical sales. Good income, company car, the kind of job his parents could brag about at their country club without having to explain what it means. I was the opposite, ordinary, quiet, not ambitious enough in their eyes. Not earning enough to deserve a seat at their table. But what they never saw, what they refused to notice, was that I quietly handled almost everything that kept our family running. I managed the household budget down to the last dollar. I planned every birthday, every holiday meal, every school registration and doctor visit for our daughter, Lily. I carried the emotional weight of a family that never once asked how I was doing. My personal struggle was simple but exhausting. I wanted to protect Lily from feeling the same exclusion I felt every time we visited the in-laws. I didn't want her growing up believing her mother was less than. I wasn't rich or glamorous. I drove a 7-year-old sedan and bought my work clothes on clearance racks. But I had something they didn't expect, and they were about to find out what it was. If you've ever been judged for earning less than someone else, or been made to feel small because you chose meaningful work over flashy money, this story is for you. If anyone has ever looked at your paycheck and decided that's all you're worth, I see you. Subscribe to hear more stories like this one. Have you ever been underestimated because of your job or your income? Tell me about it in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And click hype if you believe a person's value isn't measured by their salary. Lily's 7th birthday party was held at a rented community hall on the east side of town. I had spent 3 weeks planning every detail. Purple and silver streamers hung from the ceiling. A craft station sat in one corner with jars of glitter and colored paper. The whole room smelled like vanilla frosting and fresh popcorn from the machine I rented myself. 22 kids ran between tables while parents stood along the walls holding paper plates and making small talk. It was perfect. That's it. Then my in-laws arrived. Late, of course. They walked in like they were inspecting a property they were considering purchasing. My mother-in-law, Diane, scanned the decorations and said loudly enough for 3 nearby parents to hear, "Hope you didn't overspend our son's paycheck on all this." My father-in-law, Richard, chuckled beside her. A few guests laughed awkwardly, unsure if it was a joke. It wasn't. Diane continued as she set her purse down on the gift table. "Savannah's always been good at spending money she doesn't earn." She said it with a smile, the way people deliver insults when they want witnesses, but not accountability. My face went hot. I looked at Grant. He stood by the drink table, pretending he hadn't heard. He avoided my eyes the way he always did when his parents said things like that. Things like that. He poured himself a cup of lemonade and turned his back slightly. Richard tapped his plastic cup with a fork and made a little toast. To our son, who worked hard to afford this beautiful party for our beautiful granddaughter. People clapped politely. Nobody corrected him. Nobody knew the truth. After the toast, I pulled Diane and Richard aside near the hallway where the bathrooms were. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead. I kept my voice low. "Please don't do this here." Not at Lily's party. Diane leaned close. Her perfume was sharp and floral, almost aggressive. "We're just being honest, Savannah. You're a leech. Everyone can see it." Richard nodded. "Our son carries this family. You should be grateful." I stood there, my hands trembling at my sides, listening to the muffled sound of children singing in the other room. Then something happened that none of us expected. The community hall coordinator, a woman named Trish who I had worked with for weeks on the booking, stepped to the front of the room with a microphone. "I just want to give a quick thank you to our event sponsor today," Trish said, reading from her clipboard. She smiled and said my full name, Savannah Brooks, who personally funded and organized this entire celebration. The room clapped. Diane's smile vanished. Richard blinked. And I felt something shift inside my chest. Not anger anymore. Something colder, something steadier. The weeks after the party were worse. The in-laws didn't retreat. They escalated. Richard called Grant one Tuesday evening and told him it was time to open a family-controlled investment account. He wanted Grant's earnings funneled into a fund where Richard and Diane had oversight. My name wasn't on any of the paperwork. When I asked why, Diane said flatly over the phone, "It's a family asset, Savannah. We want to make sure nothing gets wasted." She meant by me. She was implying I would drain whatever they built, that I was the risk. That was the first escalation. The second came at a family dinner the following Sunday. Diane's dining room smelled like roast beef and furniture polish. 12 relatives sat around the extended table. Halfway through the meal, Diane turned to Grant's aunt and said casually, "Savannah works, you know, but it's mostly for fun money, little projects here and there." I set my fork down gently. "I don't work full-time, Diane. I teach 30 kids every day." "But it's not exactly a career, is it?" Two cousins exchanged glances. Nobody defended me. Grant stared at his plate. The third escalation was the one that truly alarmed me. I discovered it by accident. Grant left his email open on the family laptop one night. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a recipe I'd bookmarked, but there it was. A chain of emails between Grant, Richard, and a financial advisor. They were discussing a trust for Lily, structured so that Richard and Diane would serve as trustees. My name appeared nowhere in the thread. Nowhere. They were making decisions about my daughter's financial future without even telling. The room smelled like Richard's leather armchair and Diane's overpowering floral air freshener. 4 chairs were arranged around the coffee table. Richard sat at the head, naturally. Diane sat beside him with a leather binder in her lap. Grant sat across from them, fidgeting with his watch. I sat last, my bag on the floor beside my feet. Richard started, "We need to talk about household spending." Diane opened her binder and slid a printed spreadsheet across the table. "These are the charges we've noticed on Grant's shared credit card over the past 6 months. She pointed at highlighted lines: birthday party expenses, school supplies, grocery bills. She'd circled them in red ink like evidence of a crime. "This is excessive," she said, "and frankly irresponsible." I didn't respond yet. Richard leaned forward. "We've put together a proposal, a family financial structure that ensures our son's earnings are managed properly." He slid a second document across the table. It outlined a plan where Richard and Diane would co-manage a household fund. My access would be limited to a monthly allowance. An allowance. Like I was a teenager asking for gas money. Grant wouldn't look at me. His silence told me everything I needed to know. He had agreed to this before I walked in the door. I let the silence hang for 5 full seconds. Then I reached into my bag and pulled out my own folder. "Since we're talking about finances," I said calmly, "let's talk about all of them." I placed my LLC registration on the table first, then my income statements from the past 3 years, then the contracts with 3 publishing companies bearing my signature. Diane's eyes moved across the pages. A little past the pages. Her face tightened. "What is this?" she asked. "This is my business," I said. "My curriculum designs have been licensed to schools in 11 states. I formed an LLC 3 years ago. I've been generating my own income independently the entire time." Richard picked up one of the income statements. His jaw shifted. The numbers were clear. My annual revenue from curriculum licensing exceeded Grant's salary by a significant margin. "The birthday party you mocked me for," I continued, "I paid for it. Every streamer, every slice of cake, every balloon. Here are the receipts." I placed them on the table one by one. And one more thing. I pulled out a bank transfer confirmation. 6 months ago, Grant's credit card was overdrawn by $4,000. I paid it off from my account so it wouldn't affect his credit score. He knows. Ask him. Grant's face went pale. Diane looked at her son. Richard set the paper down slowly. I picked up my phone and dialed Dr. Corbin. I put her on speaker. "Dr. Corbin, can you confirm that Savannah Brooks is a contracted independent designer with your publishing company?" "She is," Dr. Corbin said clearly, "and one of the most talented I've worked with." Her materials are used in over 200 school districts nationally. The room was completely silent. Diane closed her binder. Richard leaned back in his chair and stared at the ceiling. Grant sat motionless, his hands folded in his lap, looking like a man who had just discovered he didn't know the person sitting beside him. I gathered my documents neatly and placed them back in my folder. I'm not here to embarrass anyone, I said, but I won't be called a leech by people who never once asked what I contribute. Not again. The following week, I opened a completely separate bank account for my personal and business income. I informed Grant clearly and without hostility that his parents would no longer have any input into our financial decisions. No more joint discussions with Richard. No more spreadsheets from Diane. No more proposals or allowances or binders full of highlighted accusations. Grant didn't argue. For the first time in our marriage, he actually listened. He started seeing a therapist the following month to work through the pressure his parents had put on him for years, pressure he had silently passed along to me without ever questioning it. The in-laws retreated. Diane stopped calling every Sunday. Richard stopped offering advice about money. They didn't apologize. I didn't expect them to, but they stopped. And that silence was its own kind of admission. I stood in my kitchen the evening after everything settled. Lily was at the table, finishing a slice of leftover birthday cake I had frozen for her. She had 7 candles lined up in a row on the counter. "Can I blow them out again, Mommy?" she asked. I lit each one with a match, and she blew them out one at a time, giggling after each little flame disappeared. The kitchen smelled like vanilla frosting and burnt matchsticks. I watched her and thought about everything they had called me. A leech, irresponsible, not enough, they were wrong. About every single word. I was the one holding everything together. And now I was the one deciding what came next. Has someone ever treated you like you contributed nothing, even when you were the one keeping things running? Has anyone ever looked at your job title or your paycheck and decided that was all you were worth? Tell me about it. I want to hear how you proved them wrong. Share your story in the comments. Subscribe if you believe your value isn't determined by someone else's opinion. And click hype to help this story reach others who need to hear it. Did this story hit home? Let me know by liking the video and sharing your thoughts in the comments. Click hype to help this story reach others who have felt underestimated and overlooked. Your support makes a real difference, and this community grows stronger every time you show up.